Morning, and welcome to Module 3, your Southern New Hampshire class. And we've got another exciting one for this week, and I think we'll hopefully be able to learn a lot about communication in organizations. We're going to have you look at some things within your own and compare some experiences. For Module 3, first, I'll talk about the assignments for this week. The title of this week is Principles for Interpersonal Communications. Our discussion of this week will be having you look at your own workplace and share some of your own experiences in your workplaces, and then obviously having you all kind of compare notes with each other. Again, be sure and read the full discussion parameters in the assignment, and that way you make sure you get everything covered that needs to be covered. And then assignment 3-2, milestone 1 is kind of a introduction that builds on your assignment from last week, where we kind of identified a couple of issues and some of the audiences and some of the things that would back up those issues. So again, read the assignments, make sure you look through the rubrics on both of them. That way you make sure you get all of the bases covered that you need to, and kind of go from there. On this week's content, a few things I'd like to highlight and kind of go over with you. One of the things in terms of, they'll be talking about how to ground with audiences and how to ground with groups of people in terms of communications, and how to break down barriers of communication. And one of the reasons this is important in organizations is because much more of the landscape is getting to be about team-based operations and businesses. And that's been an ongoing trend, obviously, and I don't see that slowing down anytime soon, if ever. It's always going to be important to be able to work with teams, and a lot of times you're working with multidimensional teams. And so what we have to be able to do to be effective in those environments is to be able to ground with other people. And so what does that mean, being able to ground with other folks? Well, it means to be able to communicate in a way that, first of all, conveys the message in a manner that they can understand, and secondly, hopefully conveys the message and is able to tie into, in necessary cases, their own experiences and their own lifetime of activities, hopefully in a way that makes that ground for them in some way, makes it tie into their own lives, their own experiences, and that will help make a message much more long-lasting. So to be able to ground with people, there's a few things that are really necessary. And if you look at whether it be politicians or executives in businesses, or charismatic people that you may have known through your lives, you'll find that one of the ways that they're able to really ground with people, they're very effective in communicating with people, is that they seem to have a sense of understanding. They understand the experiences of other people. They understand the needs of other people. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be like that individual. If you look back on the Kennedys, when they were in power in the 60s, one of the things that made them so charismatic was both John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy were able to convey that they understood people's needs. And this despite the fact that they grew up in markedly different environments than most people. They grew up wealthy. They grew up in the top 1%, probably a tenth of 1%. But despite that fact, they had had enough experiences in their lives, and they had been around enough people in their lives to where they could at least be empathetic and understand the types of experiences that most people have, and they conveyed that in the way they approach things. I did touch on empathy. Empathy is the ability to be able to look at things from another person's perspective, be able to understand things from another person's perspective. And again, that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to have had the exact same experience as someone else. But if you've been on the fringes, if you've traveled, if you've seen different things, even though you may not have that as your firsthand lived experience, you've at least been close enough to it that you could gain at least a solid secondhand knowledge of what people might be going through. And then more importantly is to be able to, in your own way, even if you haven't experienced it firsthand, at least you are able to experience secondhand the emotions and what people might feel and how these things might impact them in their lives. And so that's empathy. Now, if you're able to be empathetic, and if you've got emotional intelligence, you're probably able to do that on a very sound footing. You're going to be better at grounding with people. You're going to be better at communicating with people because you'll know how to pitch your communication. You'll have a better idea of how to put together a speech or to put together a presentation because you're able to gauge who your audience is, what their experiences are, and you'll have a better feel for what will actually mean something to them and how things will hit home in that presentation. And the final thing is sympathy. You know, even at times, if you can't totally understand firsthand what people are going through, if somebody has a death in their family, or they've had multiple deaths that they've experienced due to a crisis or a major event in their lives. Most of us hopefully will never go through that, but can at least sympathize because of empathy, and you're able to ground with them and to hit an emotional connection that's necessary in instances like that. But the bottom line is, for you to be able to ground with people, this is where it just takes a multitude of experiences. And no matter what background you come from, you need to bridge the gaps with other people by experiencing more things. If you grew up wealthy, going to public schools is an example of being able to do that. If you didn't grow up wealthy, there are ways to do it on the other side of it. You can find ways to hopefully ground with people from different backgrounds and at least understand what their experiences might have been like. So trying to have a multitude of experiences, do a lot of different things, can really help you in terms of being able to ground and make better connections with people. Travel is a really good way to do that. Just getting around the country, getting around the world. Part of our problem in the United States is it's so easy for us to be insular because we just have such a vast country that many of us never get out of it. And so when we're talking about global issues, it's very easy for Americans to kind of stick their head in the sand because we're so insulated from it all because of the vastness of this country. Versus if you lived in Europe and you travel country borders like we travel state borders. So traveling, getting around can obviously help with that as much as possible. So anyway, that's kind of what it comes down to with grounding with folks, being able to work in teams better, being able to work into organizations better. But the other side of it, and this is what makes it challenging, is when you do have sympathy, when you do have empathy, when you do feel for other people's experiences in organizations and in companies particularly, you also have to have accountability. You have to have accountability for results. So we have to be able to balance empathy, even sympathy, with the necessity to achieve results in an organization. And so being empathetic, even being sympathetic, doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to still expect things out of people. And that is where the really delicate balance comes in. You know, how do you empathize? How do you sympathize? How do you try to be compassionate, but at the same time, be able to communicate to people that there's still certain things that have to be achieved every day and every week and every month in an organization, and that has to be taken care of, at least for the intermediate and the long term. So learning that balance and learning how to do all of that, even in a team-based environment, is very important for all of us to do. And it's not an easy balance at times. It really isn't. And sometimes we get it wrong. Sometimes we go a little too overboard on the sympathy and the empathy, and it kind of blows up on our face in terms of not getting what needs to be done in an organization. And other times we may go the other way, and we may be a little too tough on people, and we may not give them the time to go through the processes they need to go through with certain big events in their lives, whether it's the death of a loved one, or even a new birth, or a child, or something like that. So we're all constantly working at finding that balance. In the medical profession, they call their medical profession and their experience, they call it a practice, because every day they're learning, every day they're getting new data, they're getting new inputs. Well, it's very much the same way with business. Every day as a manager, you're going to get new inputs, you're going to get new feedback, and there's going to be times you're going to make mistakes, there's going to be times you're going to blow it. The important thing is to be able to own it and to be able to make amends if amends are necessary. And the sooner you do that, the better. So anyway, I think that's it for Module 3. I hope you learn a lot from the content from this module. Hopefully this video helps a little bit. I'm also going to be including a supplemental video that I found that I think is pretty good on the communication front. So hopefully that will be as good value as well. And so anyway, have a great week, and don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any issues, anything that I can help you with. Thank you all, and hope you have a wonderful week, and stay safe.